2, 1. Is 40 years too long without a lay? Some would actually prefer it that way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the case of the repeating song. But no, we're here. We are welcome to episode 3 of Talking Pictures Alliance. For today, my co-host Jeff Reynolds and I, Kristen Ashton, will be talking about The 40-Year-Old Virgin, a movie that released in 2005 and follows the story of Andy, who is a 40-year-old virgin. His buddies at work find out, and then the rest of the movie is all about trying to get this guy laid.
That's right. I don't know how I'm supposed to not laugh at the intro to this one. I mean, it took some serious guts to not laugh when you said that's pretty good.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I have to say, putting together the notes for this show was very interesting, right? Because we have a movie that's entirely based around sex. But how do you have a conversation that's not about the sex, right? Because the movie actually isn't really about that. There's the humor of that culture, but that's kind of not it.
No, it's absolutely, very well said. I think that that's something a lot of people think. And the title doesn't really do it justice, obviously. It kind of brings the sex in right at the very beginning. But I think it's what's funny about it is the relationships, right? I mean, and that's what successful comedies have is, they don't just have one through line throughout the film. This could have just been about that, but it's the relationships of these people and Andy's relationship with them and, all of the stereotypes that we see that are blown way out of proportion in this movie. I mean, it's very well done.
Definitely. And you have for your first thing that you wanted to talk about today, fantastic writing goes a long way. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't that tie in directly to what you were just saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer statement, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, people think that, it's the actors that bring the words on the page to life, and it is. But it starts with the words being put on the page, right? So you can get Daniel Day-Lewis in there and have a horrible script, and he can only make it so good. And I think that the writing in this film is really good. The jokes are really funny. The relationships, like you were saying, this ties right into that. I mean, they're really on point.
Yeah, so you're saying your favorite part about the script, and when you say that it's fantastic writing, it's about the relationships between the people more so than anything else. It felt real.
Yeah, so take the scene at the first third of the film when Andy gets to play poker with his buddies at work and they break into the store and they play poker in there, right? And he's trying to convince them, they're talking about all of their sexual experiences, and then they ask Andy. There's a good minute of this relationship building where these guys don't know what to think, and you can really, really see it when they're having this conversation like, wait a second, and it's formulating in their mind, this guy's a virgin. Like, it's that's building this relationship. You can see that they want to help him for some weird reason, because that's what society says. We got to help this guy, to get laid or whatever. And it's just great. So that carries out throughout the film. The relationship with the boss that they have, that's totally okay with this guy taking off his pants and work, sending him home for the day and bringing him back the next day, right?
I love her as the boss. And I was reading with the trivia that apparently she was suggested by Steve Carell's wife, because apparently she had worked with Steve at Second City, and the manager was originally going to be a guy, but they brought in, let me check her name here, but they brought her in, and it was just fantastic. And I knew I fell in love with her character, at least, when she started telling the story of her Hispanic gardener who would sing her the love song.
The thing about the casting in this movie is that it's odd to think that in 2005 we hadn't seen a lot of these people, right? I mean, we had, but in supporting roles. This is the first time I ever saw Steve Carell in a leading role. I saw him in Anchorman, which happened before this, and he was great. And everybody loved him in that. So putting him in this leading role in 40-Year-Old Virgin. This is the first time I can remember really seeing him, and now look where his career has gone. I mean, it's blown up.
Right? And his ability, I think, to play a believable, awkward but lovable guy, that's his selling point, right? Because we know that he was big opposite Stephen Colbert back at their time at improv at Second City. So it's funny to see the differences and how when you do improv, you kind of latch on to a very specific type of character. And as long as you have a good balance opposite that, it really works. So in this one, we've got Andy and then his friends. And it seems like his friends are all these overblown stereotypes of a typical group of friends. And that made me wonder, Jeff, who of the friends are you actually? And would you want to be?
Oh man, this is a great question. I think that, I mean, like you said, the stereotypes are blown way out of proportion. But if I had to pick somebody that I was in this, it would probably be Paul Rudd's character, David, in the show. Only because when I was growing up, for some reason, you know, in college or in high school, whenever I was in a relationship, I was completely involved very quickly. Like, oh, we just did this, amazing trip, and we had a picnic out by the park and all this stuff. And like, bro, you've been dating that girl for like 3 weeks.
Oh my goodness. So answer me this. Were the breakups just as emotional? Did you go through downer, like 2 week long periods where your friends were like, Jeff, man, come on?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I had some serious, at one point, this sounds so stupid. I stopped eating because I was like, I just can't eat. I just can't keep anything down. I'm like, you're in high school, dude. It's so stupid. And yeah. What about you, Kristen? Let's change the topic.
No, this is gold, man. I was expecting you to say college, not high school. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Okay, but yes, we'll change it. I would have to say I'm actually probably Jay, the one who pretends to be a player and is all energy and probably as dirty as they come. But deep down, they're just a scared little person. They found somebody they really like and they don't want to be hurt, but they act big and tough because they don't want to be hurt.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great moments in there, right? Jay's the one that I think that I would want to be in the friend group if I had to choose one, but no, I am David. I am caught up in what is happening in there. And I mean, if you have to look at this group of friends, that's another thing with the writing, is that they're all different. They all act differently. And, as much as they quote unquote have in common, these different stereotypes of people in relationships really play out. I mean, there's that one scene where his girlfriend comes to the shop and he's trying to play it off on Andy that was his dating card and stuff. That's stuff that people actually do. Not only come to the shop to confront somebody to make sure that their partner isn't lying about what's going on, but I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, definitely. Now, have you ever had to play wingman for somebody? I mean, or have you actually found yourself in a situation where you had to take blame for something just so your buddy could get off the hook?
I think maybe not in a relationship kind of way, but there's been a few times where I've had to take blame for friends to get them off the hook of things and, whatever. But I think being wingman is a much harder job than a lot of people think. And I have done it for some friends who will remain nameless, right? So, it takes a lot of guts. And this is a great thing to talk about. Our culture is completely different nowadays than it was even in 2005, right? In 2005, you'd have to go to a bar and meet somebody and walk up to them and start talking to them and make something happen. Nowadays, people don't do that. Like, it's not a thing. You go on your app, you find Tinder, whatever it is, you swipe through the people you don't find attractive, and then you find somebody and try to connect that way. And there are pros and cons to both, I actually think. Like, with the current way that relationships are, I mean, you're basically shopping Amazon for somebody that you might want to spend the rest of your life with, right? But back in the day, you needed a wingman. You needed somebody that would, either force you to go up and talk to somebody or go and talk to them for you, right? So it's real different.
No, totally. And holy dude, right? It's so 2005. So we're looking at 13 years already since this movie came out. And you're not wrong. Nobody, they had cell phones, but they didn't have smartphones. And it's great to see all of the different ways that the friends meet women. Everyone has their own perspective on how you're supposed to go in and find a partner, right? But it's all this stupid stuff, and sometimes people are depressed, or sometimes they've got a porn addiction, and they leave their tapes with you. Oh, that was probably one of my favorite scenes. But I love in comedies when you have the friend that loudly says something very embarrassing in order to force your main character to do something they wouldn't normally do, which is the bar scene, right? They're his wingmen. And instead of, they're kind of trying to force him, but they're also trying to help keep, I guess, predatory chicks away from him.
Like, okay, why though, Kristen? Why do you think these guys make it their mission to get this guy laid? Like, why? Because I can come up with some things in my mind, but it's not, I mean, you believe it in the movie, but there's not a whole lot of backbone to what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the main reason is maybe they're bored, right? Every group of friend likes a quest. Every group of friend likes a quest. And this is something too that's a necessary part of the human experience. Like it doesn't change you when it happens, but at the same time it kind of makes you a more complete part of humanity because it's our prerogative as mammals. So that would be mine. What about you?
Yeah, I think that that's really, really well said. And I also think that society in 2005 and today and 1940 whatever and 18 whatever, it is a big deal. It's a big deal if you don't do certain things at certain times in your life, because people either view it as, oh, your life is running out and you wasted 20 years of your life not getting laid, or you're doing these things, or you're not doing things. And I think that brings us to the next thing you're talking about. Is there anything that you didn't do in a proper timeline of what people expect?
Yes, there is. I didn't actually own my first car until I was 28. And mind you, that's about 4 years ago. It just never happened. Like Andy said, we could go into the flashbacks, but I went to college and there was a bus system, and I didn't feel like I needed a heavy financial burden then. College ended and I went back home for a little bit, and so my parents were extremely generous. And then after that, I moved up to Chicago with incredible public transit, so it just never happened.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I didn't own a car until I was 18, so that was even, you can feel the pressure from other people around you. You want to go hang out at whatever, and you're like, yeah, well, I don't have a car, so if somebody can pick me up, I can feel the pain of this.
Totally. And let me ask you this question: do you, in your perspective, believe that guys are a bit more pressured to get the car, since they're kind of like the provider role, than girls are, right? Since girls are technically the ones that are picked up.
Yeah, and they touch on this in the movie too, right? Because he goes to pick up his girlfriend, or who he hopes to be his girlfriend, and he's got to tell her. And I feel so bad for him. So many parts in this movie. I mean, he's got to tell her, oh, yeah, I got a bike. She's like, oh, I love bikes. I dated a guy that had a Harley, and everything's like, no, I have like a bicycle.
It's so believable too, and that's happened to me. It was actually Kyle. It was a scooter, and originally, but this was reversed, because when he said scooter, I was thinking like one of those foot scooters,
like razor scooters.
Yeah, when you're like
sharper image.
So he shows up on this two-wheel, not motorcycle, but if it went a bit faster, it would be a motorcycle.
Like a
it was
Vespa.
like, oh, well, there we go.
That's great. See, that's a great story, though. And I mean, It's really good. I actually didn't have my first drink until I was 21. On my 21st birthday, I had my first drink. And that was another thing where, in high school, and this is another thing that I think is really on point with this movie, are the 2005 nerd references, right? So the one thing that does age with this movie, obviously, is technology. And technology is a big part of, what we call nerd culture, right? So, I mean, the fact that he's sitting down and reading a Prima strategy guide for a Wario game in the movie, that ages, but you can relate that to, if they were to do it today, maybe he would be surfing Wowhead, or maybe on like the WoW wiki or something, looking up how to get 100% achievements in God of War.
Yeah, dude, right. And then the cutscenes we have with him practicing tuba, and then he's working out at home, and then he's sitting in his sweet game chair with one of the best setups ever playing his video games. It's all just so simple and wonderful. And here's another, so a thing I was reading is that Steve Carell decided he didn't want to make Andy unattractive. So he lost 30 pounds to get ripped, essentially, for this role. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you agree that Steve Carell made a good choice going with Andy only being socially awkward? Everything else is fine, but the reason he never got laid was because of social awkwardness?
Yeah, I read this too as I was researching, and Judd Apatow, the director of the film, was upset at this originally because he wanted him to be a husky guy, like like what we know as a stereotype nerd or whatever. But in the end, Judd thinks that it did work out. That it did work out because it made the fans root for him more. I don't know if they have done a montage of him getting into shape or whatever. I don't know. I really don't know. So take this, like, let's see. Jonah Hill is in this movie, and it's like one of the first times you ever see Jonah Hill on the big screen. His scene is amazing, right? So what if Jonah Hill was Andy? Would you like the movie as much as we did with Steve Carell? I mean, just talking the physical aspects of it, I don't know.
I personally would not. I like my main characters to be attractive. I honestly do. And I think too, in comedies, you can really take the weird stuff to the extremes. If you have or maybe you have one thing that's normal, right? So that's your anchor point. And then everything else can be as crazy as possible because that one thing is believable. But then how when does it cross over into movie of the absurd, theater of the absurd kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's already pushing the boundaries on so much, and so maybe that's why everybody likes it, because you just really think this is a normal dude who's out there and just happens to be nerdy. I mean, the painting, I can relate to the stuff that this guy does, right? Painting model armies, and having your neighbors outdoor, and every Tuesday we got a standing date to watch Survivor. And then even more than that, something I can personally relate to, which I want to know if you can too, is hanging out with what are considered like the quote unquote cool people of whatever group you're in, and how I used to try really hard to hang out with those people. And when I did get to hang out with them, I tried really hard. Like, I would go to the store, buy a new shirt, put the shirt on, hang out with these people, and try really hard. And really, when you get to be our age now, you're like, why did I do that? Forget those people.
It was kind of opposite for me. My mom.
You were the cool person.
What? That's what everyone says, but it's kind. I don't know what to make of it. All right. So my mom, my grandma. I love my grandparents, but growing up, my mom apparently, it's come out a few times that grandma was that 1950s keeping up with the Joneses kind of a thing when she was younger. And, now she's loosened up. So my mom raised me with a very strong sense of, if someone doesn't like you, who cares? Don't hang out with them. You've got three little siblings at home and a mom and dad. You don't need anybody else. So I grew up with, well, fine, if they don't like me, whatever, it's no sweat off my back. So I never really tried too hard to fit in until, of course, I was put in a situation where I embarrassed somebody of a, let's say, higher class than I am. And I got a talking to, and it's something that's kind of stuck with me now, because now I'm a little into trying to figure out social interactions and how do you fit in with society without being a jerk about it, right? Because you have the popular people who are awesome, and you have the popular people who are assholes. They're just popular because, you know, maybe their parents are rich or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, you know, talking about workplace friendships and all of that type of stuff, feeling out the relationships at a work, you spend more time at work than you do at home. I mean, with your family and all of that, you spend more time with the people that you work with, right? So let's imagine it's the first day of a brand new job and you go in there and these people are like, hey, I really like to play golf. Do you want to come and play golf with us? And you haven't hit a golf ball in your life. You're going to say, I never hit a golf ball in my life, but I'd love to go play golf with you, because you want to just build these relationships up. And that's what happens in this movie for Andy, right? He's socially awkward. His friends say, you want to play poker? And he's, you know, secretly really good at it because he plays online poker. But that's one of those moments where, no, he probably doesn't. He wants to probably go home, play online poker, watch Survivor with his neighbors, and just, you know, keep on chugging at life.
Exactly, doing what makes him comfortable. And this brings up a really interesting topic in regards to this movie, because at the end, he makes up with his girlfriend, who's a hot grandma. Who's got kids and grandkids, a hot grandma. And the moral is kind of be true to yourself, right? Because Andy doesn't change socially. He's still as awkward as he's ever been, but he's kind of reached out to people. And I guess my question is more, how be true to yourself do you feel is necessary in our society, right? Because we've already talked about Andy, he's normal in every other aspect. He's hygienic, he's fit. So what if he paints figurines and talks to himself? We all do that. so what aspects do you think how true to yourself should you be when you go to change yourself in order to obtain something?
Wow, dang, hitting the hard-hitting questions here. I think that I think you should always be really true to yourself. I think that you said it really well. It's also finding the balance of letting other people be true to themselves when you're, you know, out with, you know, brand new friends and, you know, you're doing all this stuff, and maybe there are certain situations where you don't proclaim everything that you know, all of this stuff that's going on, because it might make other people feel uncomfortable or all of that. And how much do you care about that depends on the situation that you're in. And of course, when you're at work, which Andy is for most of this movie, the stereotype of these people not following the rules of HR is definitely blown out of proportion, right? Like majorly. And the fact they never get in trouble for it is another thing. And that's what makes it funny, because people know that when you're in a situation like that, you can't take off your pants and put a camera, you know, on your butt and blast it to everybody that is in the store, right? You can't do that. You'd lose your job. So the fact that he comes back is funny. I mean, that's all funny. So all of this to try to say, of course, be true to yourself and all that. And Andy finds that in the end, and he finds someone that accepts him for being true to himself. And that's part of life, and finding that person. I mean, I am very lucky because I am a super Andy nerd in a lot of ways. And I have found someone that accepts me for that as well. And, you know, I'm just a lucky guy.
Totally. And what do you think about the fight that Andy and Catherine or Catherine Keener plays Trish, that Andy and Trish have, right? Because we have this thing, Trish is trying to get Andy to pursue his dreams. Sell your toys, make a butt ton of money, and invest that into what you want to do. And he freaks out. Now, he freaks out because of a very different reason. But I personally found that fight to be a very real moment that I think maybe a lot of couples early on in their relationship go through.
Yeah, I think a lot of relationships, I have a cousin that got out of a relationship, and she said, I don't want to find somebody in the world anymore that is just out to try to fix me. Like I'm their pet project and they want to come in and yeah, they care about me and all this stuff, but they want to fix me, whether that's losing weight or going and doing things that I don't really want to do. I want to find things that we can do and share together. But because you care about somebody, you say those things like, hey, if you sell all of these toys, you can follow your dreams and you can do what you want to do. And pushing people outside of their comfort zones is a big part of being in a good, healthy relationship, right? I mean, it's part of it, but it's a hard part of it.
Right? And that brings it back to the be true to yourself thing, right? How do you know then when you're with somebody, what's them loving you for you and wanting to push you to be the best version of yourself that you can be versus somebody that's abusing the privilege, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
It is. It totally is. All right, now we were talking about retail and showing your butt on screen and then bringing the video of the baby because your girlfriend was pregnant and everything. How many of those things have you wanted to do in a retail job before?
All of them. I mean, let's be real. When you work in retail, any type of customer service, you're out there and you're thinking, just all this stuff, but that's the challenge with working in any sort of customer service gig is not refraining from doing any of that.
Dude, okay, so what's the craziest thing that somebody got away with that you worked with that happened?
Oh man, I don't know. And I worked in retail in college and in high school. I worked for Apple Retail, which is a different kind of culture, right? Because, I mean, working in retail I could probably safe to say that people that work in retail at Target or whatever don't have the same connection to the product than people that work in Apple. I mean, they kind of build you up into this thing. So it didn't happen that often. But I mean, sometimes you can't do it, right? So sometimes people snap. Do you have a specific time that you can think of?
Yeah, it wasn't crazy. I wish it was as crazy as this movie got. But there was, it was an organic grocery store, lots of vegans, lots of vegetarians, lots of Episcopalians, anything you could think of, it was there. And there was this vegan lady who was a terror. She was a horrible person. She never had anything nice to say. So whenever she would get a sandwich at the deli people would put real cheese on her sandwich. And she would always tell them how wonderful the sandwiches tasted.
I had a friend that worked at Starbucks, and at Starbucks, people come in and they say, I want a skinny, non-fat, whatever. And he said that at one of the Starbucks he worked at, this was years ago, Starbucks reps out there, years and years and years ago, it'd be like, yeah, no problem. And they'd look over and they'd be like, okay, looks like we got some whole milk steamed, so that's what's going in this latte. And they just make the latte. But that's a great story about the vegan sandwich. That's very funny.
Yeah, and I mean, it just speaks to that. And it's funny that they never actually have crazy customers where they work, right? They're just bored with their jobs. That's really it. The only crazy customer is that Jonah Hill moment at the we buy your stuff and sell it on eBay store.
If I have to hear Yamo be there one more time, Yamo burn this place to the ground. That's probably my favorite line in the whole movie at the very beginning.
I would say my favorite lines, but they're from the Indian coworker. And they're not really clean to be said. I love that guy. I think if I could have been any of the side characters, I would have been him if I could have.
I mean, just talk about this guy is delivering these lines, which are absolutely outrageous. And he is delivering the lines just with a perfectly straight face, as serious as if he was reading Shakespeare, right? I mean, that's what makes that funny. It's great.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then you wanted to talk about the waxing scene, I see.
I mean, I wrote down here waxing scene, enough said. I mean, the fact that it was real, the fact that they wanted to do it fake and he said, no, it's got to be real. It's got to be a real reaction to what's going on and what's happening. I mean, and his lines as he's getting waxed are not scripted. He's just saying whatever. And the fact that the woman laughs at him while it's happening and he reacts to her, I mean, it's all just honest, great stuff.
Dude, yeah, and speaking of her face, if you watch the characters, the friends in the background, their faces, that was probably the funniest part of the scene. And I was okay with it up until they waxed his nipple. I was totally fine, but I was so shocked that that just didn't come off with everything else.
Oh man, they didn't trim it down or anything. They just went for it, and it's just real painful. And then, I mean, this also shows how naive I am about something like this, but I didn't know that you would bleed from something like that. I mean, I guess you do, because he was bleeding. And I mean, that's all real stuff, what artists do.
Exactly. I mean, you're just ripping the follicles out, and sometimes they come out clean, sometimes not so much, but you'll be smooth. You will be smooth.
No thanks.
So no waxing in your future.
No.
No waxing the legs there. Going for that
No.
swimmer finish.
Ouch.
All right. So my biggest question for this movie was the ending. I love Age of Aquarius. And now I've been singing that song the past 2 weeks. I'll come out of the bedroom and I'll dance and do a little song, Age of Aquarius. And I was reading, and they explained why they chose it. So Judd Apatow, he was talked to by one of his friend comedy directors, and the friend told him, look, you gotta have an ending where it's shown that Andy's sex is better sex than his friend's sex because it's love. It's not just a random hookup. He's in love with this woman, and therefore it's better than his friends. And Judd was like, I can't have a sex scene in this movie. We can't do that. So Steve Carell apparently had the idea, why don't we just do a song? And so that's how they kind of showed that without getting too graphic, even though the rest of the movie is kind of graphic. I think the barf enough could warrant an awkward sex scene at the end. But but my question to you, Jeff, knowing this, what song would you have chosen?
Oh, I think that this is just real funny. I think they could have gone this direction, which was great, or they could have gone full on original song. Would have been really funny if they had come up with something original. And then you could even take it to, like heavy metal kind of thing where it's just, that intense. I don't know. But Age of Aquarius is real good. And like the whole scene of them on the end, it comes out of left field and it works.
It does. And I was reading as well that the director edited the film based on laughter from test audiences, which I thought was a fantastic way to edit a comedy, because then you know exactly where those beats are and you don't have to guess at it, because I'm sure you know, Jeff, sometimes what you think is funny is going to be hilarious to an audience falls flat, but something you just didn't even consider, the audience freaking loves.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's an amazing way to edit it, right? And then you can kind of just watch the audience's reactions and just know, oh, okay, this falls flat or it doesn't. I'd be really curious to see the stuff that didn't make it.
Oh, I watched the unedited version, and you didn't miss too much.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's good.
I mean it's amusing stuff. I think the most amusing one was in he's on a late night call with the director pretending to be an Indian guy who works for Viagra, and Andy's asking if I you said call if I have an erection for more than 4 hours, and the guy's like, "Did you take Viagra?" And Andy goes, "No, I didn't take it." So then the guy tries to walk Andy through different ways to lose the erection.
That's funny.
It's pretty good. All right. Well, any other topics you'd like to breach, go over before we move on to suggestions?
No, I think it's just a really fun movie.
Well said. It is. Lots of laughs and lots of good time. But if you don't like awkward humor, it may not be for you.
Right, or raunchy humor, right? I mean, the film is very raunchy, and it's funny, but it is. If you, it's not something that you'd sit down with your family to watch on family movie night.
Exactly. Don't bring grandma to this one. So I was thinking, if you like this one, other Judd Apatow films, Cable Guy, which I didn't know was him, but that's a good one. Anchorman, classic, and Superbad. I actually really enjoyed of his.
Yeah, those movies are all, comedy staples of what we know, and they have the same similar style, right? I put Wedding Crashers and Old School on this list because it's got the same kind of Saturday Night Live style. And obviously, if you like Steve Carell, Andy is a whole lot like his character in The Office in a lot of different ways. Just a guy that's nerdy and like trying to do the best for his office crew, but just doesn't do the right things. And that's definitely a watch if you haven't seen it and you like Steve Carell.
Exactly. That the socially awkward guy with a heart of gold kind of a thing. And so I see on here too, you put Crazy Stupid Love. I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it's not a bad movie, and it kind of feels the same type of, falling in love and what's that's all about and relationships and things like that. So Crazy Stupid Love would be a good one if you're looking in there. And I see you put your Be Yourself movies here.
Yes, and it ended up being Disney movies. Disney seems to have a fun moral stand on that. So if you like films where the moral of the story is simply to be yourself with a few changes here or there, Aladdin, of course. You can't lie about who you are. You're a street rat. You're born a street rat. You will die a street rat. Fleas will mourn you and all that. And then Mulan, if you want the opposite. If you want a girl and a guy, there you go. Because Mulan... Oh, sorry, go for it.
I was going to say, talking about people being themselves and not lying, the scene where Andy is in the bookstore and he's just answering all of her questions with the question formatted and she's falling for it. And then the fact that it doesn't work when he goes to speed dating is just the comic genius. I think that's so funny.
Oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. And that speaks to that whole throwback kind of a comedy, long form, right? Where you set something up in the beginning and then 30 minutes later when you've forgotten about it, you bring it in again and go, "Oh no."
Yeah, it's great.
But the reason I got so excited was because Mulan at the end, the song is "Be true to your heart. That's when the heavens will part. And baby, shower you with my love. Open your eyes." From 96 Degrees. I don't know if you remember that. My mom loved the Mulan soundtrack. So every morning, 6:30 a.m., we're waiting for the bus to ship me downtown to school. We listened to Mulan.
That's great. I mean, and on the topic of really nerdy things, let's continue with the show.
I feel like this show's becoming a nice collection of relating our lives to the movies that we watch.
I mean, that's why people go to see movies. They either want to have the life of the people that they're watching or they don't. Or, they can relate to what's going on. And it's interesting because, I'm not Han Solo, but I want to be. Or, I'm glad I'm not in that X situation or whatever. It's all about entertainment.
It totally is. All right. And then the question, Jeff, is, will this stand the test of time? Do you think it'll go down as one of the most classic comedies ever created?
Yeah, I really do. I think the writing is real good, and I think that it'll hold up because the cast is stellar and the performances are honest. I also think that, like we talked about before, the technology aspect of the movie ages, and it's only going to continue to age and age and age. And maybe we'll eventually get to a point where, you know, I don't know, relationships are run so completely differently than this kind of view, and there's nobody around anymore that has relationships like that, or, you know, experiences going into a bookstore to actually talk to somebody. Maybe that will be the downfall of this film, but I don't see it happening. I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, right. We need to talk to people, and I think whether it's online or in person, that thing stays the same. Now, talking about tech aging, do you like how similar Airplane and its technology still is to modern day aviation, or does that scare you a bit? Since that's one of those classic comedies, right? But you can watch it nowadays and still understand.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because some of the stuff in there is so old that it's funny too. I mean, it goes the other direction. People smoking on planes and things like that doesn't happen anymore, and that compounds the humor, I think, for people, because, you know, they're thinking, you know, it's the same thing like when you see these, you know, things where people are doing things that are clearly bad for them and they just don't know it yet, and people find that interesting, right? So I do think your point, back to your point about the stuff, it is interesting that some of that still holds up really strong.
Mm-hmm. All right, and with that, I think most of this conversation is done. So, Jeff, what is next for Talking Pictures Alliance? What film will we be delving into?
Next, we are talking about a movie I believe, if you're listening to the show, you probably have seen, and one of my favorite films, Back to the Future. You can find Back to the Future on HBO Now or Go, and you can also find it on Amazon Prime. Those are both free ways if you subscribe to either of those services to watch Back to the Future, or you can pull out your old VHS tape of Back to the Future, be kind, and rewind it.
So, how many times do you think you've watched Back to the Future in your lifetime?
Oh my gosh. When I was little, I used to go to the movie shop that was located in a grocery store, and they only had like, I want to say maybe 100 video tapes there. And my mom would always let me rent video, and I would go home and it would come in this plastic sleeve, and the plastic sleeve at the bottom, you would squeeze the bottom of it. It's kind of like a Chinese finger trap. When you squeezed it, the video would fall out of it. I don't know why I remember that, but I watched Back to the Future a lot. I probably have seen it more than 100 times in my life, but not as much as Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I eventually burned out the VHS from that store, and they couldn't rent it to people anymore.
You went down as a legend. There's still a plaque with your name on it. And then the burned out VHS of the kid that loved Indiana Jones so much. All right, and then final question. I know we'll be talking about it in 2 weeks' time, but is Back to the Future your favorite of the trilogy, or is your favorite one of the other films?
No, it's the first film, I think, is definitely my favorite. I think, yeah. I mean, I think it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier, but the first one is real good. And I can't wait to talk about how there's a lot of controversy with this movie, actually, that I can't wait to talk about when it comes to casting and when it came to the actual role of Marty McFly that we'll get into in a couple weeks. So get out there and watch this movie and send us your thoughts.
Yes, I have no idea about this controversy, so you gotta tune in next week and share your thoughts like Jeff was saying. Be featured in the mailbag. Write us at talkingpicturesalliance@gmail.com or tweet us your thoughts at TPAcast. I will be tweeting Back to the Future trivia for the next 2 weeks, so definitely follow us on Twitter, and you too can see the trivia. All right, with that, Jeff, where can people find you?
You can find me right here on Talking Pictures Alliance. We record the show every other Sunday at noon. You can follow it on Kristen's Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Dream Destroyer. and I'm doing all of Kristen's contacts now, I'm realizing, which is DRMDESTRYR. I've got that all memorized after all of these years. Find me on there. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Jeff Reynolds. Also, before I forget, there is a really great Back to the Future documentary that you should watch. It's also on Netflix. It's called Out of Time.
I will have to check that out because I love movie documentaries.
I'm going to confirm that that's what it's called.
Hold on, we can double check this. Tell me more about your favorite scenes from 40-Year-Old Virgin.
What is talking about 40-Year-Old Virgin? All of them. I mean, it is all so good. I think my number one favorite scene is the scene in the bookstore. I think it's just so funny how she is all about it and he's not doing anything. I think that's really, really good.
Definitely. All right, I found it. Out of Time, one word, OUTATIME, saving the DeLorean time machine. Well, I guess where it goes, it chronicles the effects of Back to the Future co-creator / producer Bob Gale. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, that's one you should watch. There's another one that we'll find, and we can tweet it out. That's really about the whole creation of Robert Zemeckis and the whole deal. I mean, it's a very cool idea.
Awesome. Well, thank you for recommending those documentaries. I'll definitely get that. And if you're looking for me, I am at _Kristen Ashton _ Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. And I want to give a special thanks to everybody who came out for the charity brawl yesterday for Heroes of the Storm. We hit our goal, Jeff. $5,000. And you know what got the final donation? Garrett Memeage. Garrett hates Monkey Brightwing. And some kind soul donated $500 to get us to that $5,000 goal with the stipulation that Garrett gets the Monkey Brightwing skin. And he did.
Your event you guys put on was just amazing. You guys did such a great job. So fun to watch and to be in the chat room and everybody was, chatting about everything that was going on and to talk about the cause that you guys played for, Make-A-Wish Foundation. It's just really cool. So congratulations to everybody that participated in that. It was really entertaining.
Totally. And I guess I should throw in the note, Heroes Forge is officially, it reached its last episode 2 weeks ago now, and that's why this show will be coming Sundays at noon now here on Twitch / Dream Destroyer. Any final words on that, Jeff?
Yes, thank you to everybody that ever listened to Heroes Forge. The show has come to the end, but all of the stuff is still available on the website for the next couple of months. Make sure you check it out, heroesforge.club, for any thoughts. We really appreciate everything that the listeners did, that the community created, that we got to talk about. It was 2.5 years of just amazing fun. So moving on to new projects like Talking Pictures Alliance, and we hope you enjoy what is to come.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. For the show Talking Pictures Alliance, you can find us here on twitch.tv / Dream Destroyer every other Sunday. For some more movie madness, we'll be back June 17th with Back to the Future and controversy talk. I'm so excited. I'm going to read all about this. And if you'd like to support this podcast, head on over to patreon.com / TPAcast. And with that, we wrap up 40-Year-Old Virgin with these final words from Jeff.
Kelly Clarkson.